114 of Rural Reliance with Canny Couple. I'm Julia.
And I'm Aaron.
We are a small homestead family from Virginia in the southwestern part of the state who work every single day to merge homesteading and frugality, reducing our dependencies on outside sources. And today we'll talk about something that we don't really hear a lot of people talk about, but I feel like when we moved from 2 incomes to 1, we really did it with a plan in mind.
Right. This wasn't something we just
Did.
Like, okay, we're going down to 1. We actually thought it through, came up with some plans, strategies, and stuff like that.
I really think this is what has led us to success so far this year.
I agree.
I really do. And today we want to share a few of the things that we did that we really feel like if you're looking to make this transition, mom wants to stay home with the kids, that somebody's looking to retire, anything like that, you can take these steps to start that process now before it's actually time to actually submit a resignation or something like that. So, I guess a little bit more intro, especially if you're new to our channel. This year, in January, we became a single income family. We have been a dual income family since we had been together, been a family.
Yep.
And we made that decision for our family to go down to 1 income. Aaron works, I stay home, I take care of the family, and do my best to take care of everything else. I don't know how good of a job I'm doing, but I try. It's more of a try at this point. But we're moving forward, and that's all that matters here. And we made this change, and it was a hard change for us.
It was.
It was a very hard change for us.
I think she had a harder time with it than I did.
I think I still have a hard time with it.
So I'm more like, okay, let's do it.
Yes.
I don't ponder on it as much as you do, for example.
It can keep me up at night.
Right.
It can keep me up at night. I don't know how many times we've had the conversation, and we still have the conversations. Is it still the right move for us?
Right.
But we had put in specific plans to make sure we would be okay. And we did this more for my peace of mind than I think for Aaron's.
That's probably true.
But it made you feel better going into this, didn't it?
It did.
So I would say the one thing we didn't put in here, and the number one thing we did before we made this move, is we became debt-free. No, we completely understand this might not be feasible for a lot of families.
But it does help.
It does help.
It tremendously helps.
It tremendously helps. You being debt-free helps so much in making this move, especially if you have littles that you're wanting to be home with, spend more time with them. Being debt-free just takes that pressure off because you're not having to worry. And
it opens up room in your budget as well.
Does.
Like if you have $1,500 going to some sort of debt, it's $1,500 that's not going into anything that you can use toward your budget monthly.
And I feel like we need to preface part of this in when we, really got into budgeting as we grew as a family and grew in our budgeting journey. We were living off of, I think, my income. But the majority of our income was going to debt. Like, we were paying off that heavy. We were living off of probably less than my income.
Probably so, because we were putting so much toward debt.
And that's just kind of how we looked at it. We kind of looked at what is our bare bones expenses, what expenses do we have, what's our monthly budget, and then whatever extra we had, we threw at the debt. Any debt. And we had done this for years to pay off any debt that we had. Then we took on a mortgage to get the house updated, which we could have cash flowed.
Home equity loan.
Yeah. It's a
I know.
Same thing. But it was a little bit different because we were already used to living off of one budget in a way, or one income in a way.
We were used to having smaller amount of spending income to do stuff with.
We had started cutting back because I would say when we first got together in our first years, we spent a lot more than we would have normally spent. We would go to the movies a lot. Now, we didn't buy the popcorn, the drinks, and all that, but we would go to the movies pretty often. Then everything kind of happened in 2020. We decided we'd really rather just wait for them to come out. We could watch them on TV if there's anything we really want to watch.
It's a lot better sitting at home
Home.
anyway.
And it's a lot cheaper because
Yeah.
instead of paying for 2 tickets, you're paying for a video for 24 hours and you get
Right.
to do it at your own pace.
Right.
We would probably went out to eat more.
We did.
Went out to eat
We
more.
did go out to eat more then because we would go out to eat with the movie.
We spent more money on groceries. I actually spent more money. I've lowered my grocery budget consistently since we've been together, but
Yeah.
we've spent a lot of money from the beginning to now.
Well, we had a lot of convenience items though.
We did. We used to buy a lot of convenience items. But I was working. I needed frozen pizzas in the freezer. I'm sorry. I just did. I still need frozen pizzas in the freezer, but my plan is to make them homemade to get them in the freezer. But first I have to use tomatoes because I have no room in the freezer because I'm covered up in tomatoes. That's my current issue at the moment. But we really had lowered our expectations and kind of lowered our lifestyle to something that was far more comfortable for us.
Very true, because it's hard to live an extravagant lifestyle, especially if you're trying to go down to one budget, if you're trying to get out of debt. It's something that you have to get used to.
Yeah, and for us, that sounds extravagant. For a lot of people, that's just normal life, Julia. We get that. But we had never really did the whole hair and nails and the pampering and the self-pampering. I've never had any. Like, I get my hair cut once every 2 years, 3 years, and that's it.
And a lot of it is in the area we're in as well. You know, being in a rural area.
You don't have as much of that. And if you do, it feels really expensive if you're frugal with your money.
Yeah.
Or if you're careful with your money. You go and look at the price, you're like, I can't do that. I can't do that. Like, if you're careful. So let's talk about the things that we did. So we said we got out of debt. That was probably our biggest one that we did.
Mm-hmm.
But that's really not what we're focusing on here. We're going to talk about the other things we did to help set us up for success, because I would say we are budgeting better than we have ever budgeted before.
Yes.
We have never been on the same page as good as we have been.
No, this is the
with
best
money.
ever.
And I feel like we are in the best place we have ever been when it comes to our finances and our income and where we need to go. So the first thing I would say is we had a really good emergency fund. We had the emergency fund that was good for us. Now, this is one that you've got to know your number. What is your number?
Right. So, for us, for example, you might have heard us talk about, her having that emergency fund when we first got together and having all those expenses come up. It was tough then. If she hadn't had that, we'd been in really, really bad shape there for a while. She probably wouldn't have had a vehicle.
Probably would have used a credit card.
Or honestly, we'd probably just lived off box fans. Honestly, we'd probably got the vehicle done, not got the heat pump replaced.
Well, we didn't know about the heat pump. The heat pump after. So we had the vehicle, the lawnmower, then the heat pump. Okay. It was 1 month, month.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
that's right.
So mine hit first. Yeah. Like right then when I was moving in.
So, but after that, it's something we set up, money going toward each month. I can't remember what we started out with, if it was $50 a month or something that we put in.
I think that's what we did. I'd always kept it at $50 a month, just automatic. It's kind of like my Christmas club account. After my first Christmas, I realized I needed money to come out into a Christmas club account to where I wouldn't feel that crunch at Christmas time.
Right.
And I kind of just set those up to go automatic.
Yeah, so, it's some we put aside. There was a couple of months, when maybe other expenses came
over. Or another emergency happened.
Or something that we wouldn't put that money toward during that month. But it was almost every month since then. So, we were continuously building this up for years. And we had a good emergency fund. So we felt good if something were to happen to the one income we have, we would be okay for a set amount of time. Yep.
That was our concern. So you have to know that number for you. And if you don't have a budget, you are not going to know that number for you. You are not. You could say 20 grand, but if your expenses are 6 grand a month, that 20 grand is not going to get you very far.
No.
If your expenses are 10 grand a month, that 20 grand is not going to get you very far. And that seems outrageous to us. But that's the reality for a lot of people. They really do have expenses like that.
Yeah.
They really have the $2,000, $2,500 grocery bill, the $1,000 a month grocery bill. We see this. We're seeing it everywhere. Yeah. Everybody has this, except for some people who don't. They're on the other end. They're like, well, no, I'm like spending $100 a month for 4 people. You have us who are spending $300 or less a month for 3 people. Mm-hmm. And so you have the extremes on both ends, but you do have to have a set number, and you need to know what it needs to be. So you have to have a budget to actually know what that number needs to be. Because if you do not know your expenses, the things you have to pay, and how much you need to have on hand, you might come into some really big trouble if you go to make this move. And that emergency fund does not exist. It does not exist. It is not a spending account.
You don't touch it.
You do not. It does not come into your brain unless there's a real emergency. And an emergency is, oh my God, the roof blew off. We have to get it replaced right now.
Yep.
Not, oh, one of our vehicles isn't working and, one of us has stayed home. We can work around that. Mm-hmm. You can find a way to work around, get that into your budget however you need to. But a real emergency.
Yep, agree.
We did a no-spend, low-spend grocery for 2 months. So for our first 2 months of groceries, I tried to keep our amount under $100, and we ate a lot from our pantry and our freezers.
And this is when we did, if you watched our videos on YouTube, the 3 Rivers Pantry Challenge.
Yep. And I feel like that really kind of
set the pace
for the groceries. Mm-hmm. And that's important because Aaron didn't think I could do it.
Well, it didn't really set the pace just for that. It set the pace more than that because we weren't going out as much.
We weren't going out as much. We were staying home.
We were trying to keep that $100.
But it's also in the wintertime.
It's in the wintertime too, so we don't go out as much.
We don't, like right now we're going out because of yard sales. Normally we would go out once every 2 weeks, once every couple of months. Once a month, something like that. We wouldn't be going out as often as we are right now because right now we're trying to hit yard sales for other things. So it feels like we're going out all the time. Whereas in January, February, we're not going to find yard sales out here.
Right.
And we're probably going to be snowed in.
Yeah. We won't hear our little ones say every day, we going to town? We going to town?
Going to town? Going to town? But it really did help set the tone for the year. It did. It helped us eat out of the pantry, especially if you have a really good working pantry. It kind of helps you figure out what you have on hand, what you need to change. You're working from it a little bit more. I would say this really was one of the best things that we did.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It really set us up, even for the future months coming up, to see, okay, what holes are we going to have, from a food pantry perspective even.
Right, because next year we're going to be doing it a little bit different. Next year, instead of not spending that money, I'm actually going to use that money to set us up in the summertime. So I don't have to do as much cooking in the summertime. Things that I can make that are shelf stable could go in the pantry. I can use that cash to kind of really help build up those food reserves that we eat through in the summertime and not have to spend so much time in the kitchen and heating up the house. Right. Because in the wintertime is the best time to run your stove. Mm-hmm. So it was so helpful. I cannot stress, if you're looking for a way just to save money in general, eat from your pantry. Eat from your pantry. Like, seriously, if you have rice, beans, some tomatoes, and some taco seasoning, you got yourself a good meal. Yeah. You really do. And I can't stress how good of a meal that actually is, but it really is a good meal. A little hot sauce. We minimized investing until we actually saw what our spending and money was going to look like.
Yeah, so this was from the perspective of, we knew we were going down to one income, but what was it actually going to look like? Yes. After that one set of income went away, and it was, okay, let's minimize what we're putting into investments for a couple of months to see where we're at, and then we reevaluate after a real month had happened, per se.
We actually waited a few months to see what we were actually going to look like. And this seems counterintuitive to what we tell you, you know, what anybody would tell you to, like, no, you need to invest. But for us, it was more of, we went from 2 incomes to 1. We knew we could live off of Aaron's income. We'd been living, you know, with less than that for a really long time.
Right. I did expect that the numbers we had were going to be off, because I didn't think we could do some of it in these amounts. So that was one of the reasons I was worried about, because see, last year our grocery budget was
400.
500.
Well, it was 500 during we were spending 500 during the house remodel, but that was because I had to rely very heavily on easier food.
But either way,
it was still 400.
So let's say going down $100 a month. Let's just do that and say, well, do we have that $100 to invest, or are we really going to need that $100 for groceries? You know, we didn't really know.
And I surprised him.
Surprised me.
I surprised him. I shocked him. I knew I could do it. I knew I could if I just had to. He just had to show some faith here. But it really did help us kind of get a handle. And then once we saw what our actual budget was going to look like, which we didn't have to make changes.
No. Nothing that what we projected was what we had throughout that whole time. We didn't. I think the only thing that we've changed throughout the years, we had to up our internet by $1 because we got some new taxes added on that we weren't expecting in the middle of the year.
But we're constantly looking for ways to lower our bills or to keep our bills the same. Like our electricity bill, we're dropping a lot.
So we have one of the outside lights on the poles. We looked at it and noticed it's costing us $15 or so a month for that. So we were like, okay, what if we just cut this off and
we can put
in some lights for that cost?
We could, for 1 year's worth of running that light, I could get 2 solar lights and put one on one.
Yeah.
One in one area, one in another. They did ask Aaron if he just wanted to turn it off.
Yeah, so get this. This kills me. So they called and said, you're wanting to have the light removed. I said, well, yeah, or we can just have it turned off. You know, I was like, I figured it's more work, you know, to take it off. And they said, well, we can do that, but you still got to pay for it monthly. And I said, do what? And she said, we have a lot of people that have it turned off in the summer months, but still pay for it. And then in the winter, they have it turned back on. I was like, no, I want it down. I was like, I'm not paying for it to sit there and not be used.
That's crazy.
I was like, really?
That's money. $15 doesn't seem like a lot of money, but that adds up.
It does.
In 10 months, it's $150.
Mm-hmm. $150. Right. So
that's a lot. That's half our grocery budget for a month, people.
That's true.
It's half our grocery budget for a month. Like, you could take that and go buy some tomatoes or apple. You buy, like, it's just crazy to me. It's so crazy. So, the next thing that we did after we put investing back into place after a few months is we started this at the very beginning of the year. We had started this kind of at the end of the year before. We were looking at the budget pretty regularly, but we didn't have a set time for budget meetings. And we knew when we made this change, Aaron said, you have to look at the budget more often with me.
Right. Because I knew with just me looking at it, you know, I could put this in, but hey, I might think this is okay and you might not.
Mm-hmm. So we implemented weekly budget meetings, and we talked about revamping our budget and how that looks. So we really worked through that, but Aaron put a lot of work into showing how much money we have coming in, how much money we have going out, what our breakdown of expenses actually looks like every single month. And it's pretty consistent. I mean, it really is. It's really consistent for us. And we're hitting our markers that we were wanting to hit every single month. Now, I will tell you, this stresses a lot of people out, having to sit down and talk with your spouse about a budget meeting, especially if you have defined roles in your relationship. Like, he handles the money and I just spend it. Like, I know there's couples like it, and that's fine. But you both need to be aware of what the budget looks like.
Right, what you've got coming in, what you got going out.
I mean, you both need to be aware. And when I'm telling you this, Aaron spends a lot of time doing the input. He likes this. And I know sometimes it probably gets frustrating because I do rely on him a lot to do that. But usually when he's doing that, I'm cooking dinner. Right. So we kind of balance each other out. Mm-hmm. He doesn't want to cook dinner. I don't want to put the receipts. I could do it, and he could cook dinner, but we're better suited for the roles we have.
So before the budget meeting, what I do is go through the spreadsheet, look at, if there's anything that we bought, usually the day before, because we usually do it on Sunday. So if there's anything we bought, from the week before on,
groceries,
anything
gas, anything like that.
Go and check all the bills, make sure nothing's due, anything like that. And then afterwards, I go through and do all the receipt apps. Mm-hmm. So to make sure we maximize, getting any cash back.
It checks the balances every 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. So it does take time, but it's really worthwhile. And the amount of work he puts into it, when we sit down and have our budget meeting, it literally takes us 5 minutes. We're like, okay, here's what we have to spend. This is how much money you have left to spend on the grocery budget every week.
Yep.
And that helps me, like, okay, if I see a really good deal, is it really worth me going and getting this deal and taking advantage of it? So there's a deal. I don't consider this a good deal, but some people might. There's a deal on canned corn at our grocery store. It's 88 cents a can. You have to buy 12 cans to get the deal. I don't feel it's a good deal, but some people might. So I have to look at my grocery budget and I have to say, okay, is this really worth me getting now, or should I wait for a lower price? I'm kind of hoping they go down to 69 cents. So for me, this isn't a good deal. Kind of hoping they go back down to 50 cents, but I'm not counting on that. That's just not going to happen. But it does help me kind of look ahead and figure out what we need to do every single week. Every single week, like clockwork. We make the coffee. We might do it before we actually have the coffee, but
having the coffee helps.
It does. It does. It depends on how long the meeting is going to be, but it really doesn't take us that long to just touch base and make sure we know and we are in the same place with our money and our finances.
Right.
Because it really does help you be a team when it comes to money. A lot of arguments are around money and not being on the same page and not going the same way with your money. And when you eliminate that, can you imagine how much stress you've eliminated from your life, your marriage? Just by being on the same page and being like, okay, here's groceries. And Aaron knows if there's something unrealistic when it comes to my grocery budget, I'm going to talk to him about it. I'm not going to wait and let him be like, well, what do you mean eggs are $4 a carton right now? Like, that's crazy. You don't need an extra $4 in the grocery budget for eggs. Like, he knows, because I don't do the grocery shopping by myself. We do it together. Yeah. He sees the prices go up with me, or he hears me talk about them. Like, oh my God, this is went up by $1. He's like, wait, what, really? And it keeps us on the same page. So he understands where I'm coming from when it comes to the budget. I understand where he's coming from. Sometimes we might have to actually talk about something, but for the most part, we're in the same direction.
Yeah, especially, when it gets toward the end of the month, are we getting it this month? Are we waiting to next month type of thing?
I'm a typical waiter. I will try to push out those purchases. That can frustrate him sometimes.
Yeah, especially when it jumps up in price.
It's okay. But if we don't have it in the budget, we can't spend it.
I know.
So, you have anything else to add about the budget meeting?
No, I don't think so.
I felt like it was such a good move for us. We had a bare bones budget in case the worst happened.
Yes. So
we knew what that was going to be.
Yep. So we know, how much it'd take us to live on week to week. I mean, month to month. This is what we project. It could be lower than this because we might actually be a little higher on groceries or miscellaneous than what we could actually do if we cut back, those type of things that we have ready on hand if we do ever need it.
Absolutely. The bare bones budget is so important. And this is what your emergency fund should be based off of. Not your actual budget, but your bare bones budget. So if you're taking your bare bones budget, say that number is $3,000, and you need 6 months of income, 20 grand might be a really good number for you. Did I do the math right?
6 times 3 is 18.
Right. So 20,000, that gives you an extra $2,000 for an emergency, an actual emergency, even though most emergencies are around 5. So I would say you need 23 just so you have some extra cash in case you actually have an emergency. But that bare bones budget does help. So once you have that number, your bare bones number, you can see how far that emergency fund can actually take you if you cut everything out. That means you ain't doing nothing fun.
Yeah.
You are nothing. You're cutting it all down to necessity.
Cut off that you can cut off.
Absolutely. And then I would think the last thing we did, and this is something we're still fleshing out, is we have more defined roles in not only our finances, but also in our family and our relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like for us, groceries has kind of always been my prerogative, but now I feel like I kind of hold it quite a bit tighter now.
Right, especially since now you are more involved in each month instead of just me saying, hey, this is how much we spent at the end of the month in groceries.
Right. Because that's what we kind of did before. I didn't actually look. I mean, I knew the number was there. We probably touched base on it once a month.
Mm-hmm.
But I wasn't actually looking at it every single week to see how much I had to spend. I would say this helped me the most. So by being more involved in the actual budget itself has actually helped me to do better on my spending, especially at the grocery store. Also, cutting back to being one ingredient on most of the foods we buy has helped a lot because it cuts out a lot of foods that you can't.
Well, I was going to say, it really cuts back on what you can actually buy at that point.
Or what you would actually eat. Aaron starts looking at labels on foods that he loves and he's like, can't eat this anymore. But there are other areas like on our homestead and things like that. But we are finding that even with the changes we make, we need to reevaluate, reassess, and look at them a little bit closer to make sure we're doing the best for us, or how to make it a little bit easier, because I'm still stretched really thin right now.
Right. You know, it's like, what else can I jump into that we thought that you were going to be able to handle, you know, type of thing. I mean, that's a really good example. But, you know, the more clear defined roles, you know, you know what's going on, what the baby needs, how many diapers we have on hand if we need more.
Like he would freak out, and I'm like, we're good. He's like, no, we're not. I'm like, we're fine. I can count. I know how many we have up to this point. I know what day I have to order them. We're okay. If I'm waiting for the next month to buy them to keep us under budget, I typically don't do that. I like to be much more ahead. But sometimes it happens because of the budget or something. Mm-hmm. Like Aaron decides to buy a bunch of trees. I gotta watch the budget a little bit careful. Gotta be a bit more careful. But I mean, we really do have a good system here. And we do have very good roles on hand because like buying her clothes, I try to buy ahead. Like Aaron wouldn't think to buy size 4 and 5. He would be like, why are we looking at these now? Because they're 50% off. Of these clothes are still in good shape and I can get them now, have them if I need them, and we can't get them later.
Right.
And we're going to have to pay full price.
Yep, very true. You know, those type of sales are something that we definitely rely on from a frugality standpoint anymore, and especially even more since we're down to one income.
Absolutely. So, I mean, like I said before, these are some of the things we've put into place, and I think they've really helped us. Yeah. Because we've not felt the hit of going down to one income.
No, we definitely haven't. You know, planning has required us to do more planning because we've had to think things through more. You know, the only one of the best things though is we don't have to try to look at both each other's calendars to plan vacations out anymore. Just got to look at one person's. You know,
vacation. What was that?
Days off. How about that? You know, we're always planning ahead, thinking, okay, you know, hey, for example, this is going to be a 3 paycheck month or something like that. You know, how do we handle that in the budget? For example, you know, if you get paid bi-weekly, there's two more weeks a month, 2 times a year that you'll have 3 paychecks. In a month.
Yep, and that we can use for projects, to fund a 529 plan, for all kinds of other things, which is kind of how we've sort of split that money up for us to utilize it in the best way because we're not counting on that money.
Right.
Like, that's not part of our monthly budget. We also made sure that when we built our budget, we built it with the number that we thought we were going to be getting, because we looked at insurances. All of that stuff, a lot of people might not think about. You got to think of health insurance when you're adding a spouse and all of these.
Yeah, that's true, because when we were talking back to our investing part there, we didn't know what my new paycheck number would be after adding you on to...
We did a guesstimate.
Right, adding you on to insurance and stuff. Now, we were in preparation, so we had already added the little one on, but we knew it would still be more. But if you're adding 2 people on, for example, at once, you've got to take that in consideration into your calculations.
Because your current pay is not going to be the same. No. It's not. Depending on what your insurance looks like, it's going to be less. And I know a lot of companies, if you have a spouse that works and they have the opportunity to get insurance,
you get a fee.
You get a fee if you try to put them on yours. So it makes it a lot harder to, even if your insurance is better, it might not be worth it. It makes it a little bit harder to manage and overcome that. But it's just one of those things that you have to think about. You have to think of what your actual take-home pay after taxes is going to look like.
Keyword, after taxes.
After taxes. What goes in your bank account, that number is going to change. You need to know exactly what that number is to the best that you can. And I would actually tell you to go under. So if you make $5,000, you think you're going to be paying $500 in insurance, take it $4,000 or $4,200. Take it down. Anything extra, you can try to shift and adjust and work into your budget.
Yep.
So you have the number you're starting with, and then you just start tacking off the things that you need. It's different. It's different, especially as a woman who worked for a really long time and did the job, did the thing. And helped with bringing assets in, bringing money into the household. It's very different. It's a different type of feeling, but having these in play will help you get a sense of freedom. And it makes you feel a lot better about going to bed at night, waking up in the morning when you know what's actually going on. And I think that's the biggest thing here. Knowing what is going on. Not just saying, okay, I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to be a stay-at-home dad and we're going to rely on your income and your insurance and all this stuff. That's happening more and more now too. Stay-at-home dads. To each their own. For us, I made more sense. But you really need to have a plan going into this. You need to have an idea of what life looks like, especially when it comes to your finances. Because if you don't, you can really get yourself into a massive mess. And if you're already in debt, you can get yourself into a bigger hole. Right. We're not telling you have to wait until you're out of debt for this.
But you have to plan it out.
You have to plan it out and get prepared.
Yep.
You have to be prepared. And I would say that, going into it with a plan, having an idea of the finances, and planning. We plan out every week. We are not the people you throw bombs at and expect us to handle well. We handle it a lot better. We have an emergency fund, but we really do like to know what's coming up. And we really do like to know what we're spending. I like to know how much money I have in my grocery budget every week. It makes me feel good and it helps me keep us on track. And I think that's the reason Erin didn't think I could keep up with the grocery budget, because I didn't watch it as well as I did before.
Exactly. That's very true, because I would just tell you, and hey, here's what we ended up at the end of the month.
Now I meal plan out everything. I know exactly, the 2 items we have to get every single week, or just about every single week. And from there, I built our grocery budget off of grocery shopping off sale items and deals. They have been awful. Oh my God, there's no sales at all. I'm so frustrated with the grocery stores. I feel like I'm going to have to start looking at other grocery stores, and we might have to actually try to see if we can get better deals, because I'm starting to get really worried that my 2 grocery stores within reasonable driving distance for us are never going to have a good deal beyond cheese. And it's really not a good deal compared to other places.
Yeah, very true. Um, what was what do you think that most people should consider their top priority when they are going down to one income?
Budget. Don't. I know. I get it. People hate the word budget. Like, I hate budgeting. Why do people who are always talking about frugality talk about budgeting? Because budgeting works, people. I'm sorry. I'm going to tell it to you like it is. When you have a budget, it actually works. And you telling me that you have your numbers, that you know you have to spend this every month, and then everything else you can spend however you want, that's a budget. That's still a budget. You could paint a pig. It's still a pig. Whatever you call it, it's a pig. I'm sorry. Budgeting is so important. You cannot do you can. I don't say you can't. Everybody can do whatever they want. You could be so much more successful.
Yep.
If you do this with a budget and a plan.
Right.
Because your budget is your plan. It's your plan for how you're going to spend your money. My goal is to be under our spending. To spend less than I'm budgeted for on my groceries. To spend, and I have. I've been averaging 240, 250 a month. So that's less than $100 per person per month. Yep. And that's amazing. That is absolutely amazing to me. And we're eating better than we ever have before. We're eating good ingredients, good foods. It's all because we're planning it out. We're touchy base. We're budgeting. And if I didn't have those guardrails, I don't even know what would happen.
Yeah.
You?
I would say having the ability to plan it out from the perspective of, okay, this is what we need to live on each month. If the other person does lose an income, do you have a backup plan in place if, somebody's hours gets cut or something, for example? Can you make it, for a certain period of time without a full income, coming in? Things like that, definitely have them in your back pocket plan-wise to hopefully you never have to use it, but if you do.
You just always want to make sure you are prepared in case anything ever happens. If you were to have job loss or anything like that, you could take care of everything.
Right.
That plan is important.
Yeah, in today's economy, you don't know. I mean, that you read about a lot of, people losing their jobs right now. So this could even be something useful if you didn't go down by choice to one income.
Absolutely. And you can go down to one income for multiple reasons. We've talked about going down to one income for me to be staying at home with the little one. But you could be going down to one income for retirement, anything like that. Because I know a lot of couples retire at different times. Now I'm going to tell you, that wasn't happening here.
She wasn't going to let me.
No, it wasn't. No, we retired together or not at all. Like, that's the rule. Like, I'm not going to keep working. We're retiring together. But I know a lot of couples, they retire at different times. Because they are different ages. And just like, well, I'm going to work till this age.
And for some people, it might be because of Social Security, you're
or
thinking
insurance or anything like that.
That's what I was going to say, insurance-wise,
They might be forced to retire. We've seen that personally with people, especially like if hospitals get merged or taken over. We see a lot of that in our area. We see so many hospitals emerge. We have heard of people who were actually forced to retire early for that. And so it happens.
Yeah. But, hopefully this was useful to you, something you can use if you are thinking about it. Make sure you start planning before you do it, though.
There's so much more to it than just thinking, okay, here's what we're going to get, and here's how I'm going to do it, and here's what we're going to do whenever there's so many other things you could be thinking about and handling. And actually see what a budget amount would help. It really does help.
Yeah. But if you got any comments, questions, you can either leave those down below or send it to thecannycouple@yahoo.com. And make sure and go over and check out our link tree with all of our other content.
And as always, thank you for joining us on Rural Reliance with the Canny Couple, where we work hard, live simple, and enjoy life. Have a wonderful day.